You may have noticed in my interviews with designers that I'm really trying to dig into their thought process. How or why do they make the decisions that they make, and what can we learn from their various approaches? To help with this, I often go through photos of their work during our conversation so that you can see what we're referring to. But that works if you're tuning in on YouTube. If you're listening on your podcast player of choice, that's fine. I do my best to describe what it is we're looking at, and you can always go to the show notes page of any episode, slowstylehome.com/podcast. Anyway, I am thinking of these episodes as sort of a Think Like a Designer series. And today we've got a great designer on, Barrett Oswald. She and I talk about several key design concepts, such as how and when to use color, the importance of adding texture to your space, and overall composition of objects, both for the whole room, including your furniture, as well as smaller moments in rooms. I think you're going to love her work and get a lot out of this episode. Let's jump in with Barrett. Barrett Oswald, welcome to the Slow Style Home podcast. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
Great. I'm going to share my screen to show some photos of your work. Tell us a little bit about why you love design. How did you get into this?
It allows you the opportunity to be very creative, but it really also allows you the opportunity to work with people doing something that matters to them. Being in people's homes is very personal, and to be able to help them create their own vision in a sense, right? They have an idea of what they would like to receive, and they're using us as a vehicle to get there.
Yeah, you're right. It is very intimate. Being invited into somebody's home and then really digging into what makes them tick. What are their values? What are their passions? And then connecting the dots for them between who they are and the feelings that they want to have in their home and design decisions. So we're going to jump right into that. And I want to start off by talking about entryways. What role do they play in a home? And I'm just going to scroll through a couple as you're talking.
Yeah. Entryways are incredibly important, and I do think that they often get discounted. This is the first thing that somebody's going to see when they come into your space. And you want it in some respects, not only to set the tone of what they're then going to experience as they move throughout the house, but you also want it to be like a very captivating moment, right? There is the functional component of entryways, which I think is always tricky, particularly we live and work in the Northeast, and it can be a real challenge to make these spaces function the way that they need to. So there is that component that we have to consider. But I do think that an entryway in general needs to almost have a wow factor to it.
Yeah, and yours do. So I was just scrolling through a couple of them. The first one I'm showing here is a fantastic, is that Shoemaker? Who is that? Or Thibault? Who is the wallpaper maker?
It is
Sandberg. Okay. It's iconic. I absolutely love it. Love this blue and white palette it's just a bunch of leaves everywhere. And it's so wonderful. So tell us a little bit about, in this house, what was the feeling you wanted to create? What was that first impression you were trying to create for this family?
So this entryway is part of a historical home that's based in North Salem, New York. This is probably the oldest house that we have ever had the opportunity to work on. It was incredible. It's been around since the late 1800s. It is such a cool house, and it has incredible moldings. You can see the back of the door. It just had, that's the original door. And there are details that are part of this home that you just don't see in more new construction. This house it was a country retreat for our clients. Our clients were based in New York City, and they were using this as their weekend house. And so when we approached the entryway, it was a little bit of a welcome home moment, right? It set the tone of this is very inviting and interesting, and the colors are beautiful. And what is beyond this is also another play on blue in the living room that backs up to this space. And so we were working all within a blue palette, but doing it in different ways to give each individual area its own personality. That's sort of how this all came to be.
What I like about it is, and hearing the background a little bit, it helps even more, but it's a country home. And so you've got this foliage, these great big leaves that are covering the walls. And presumably, because they're in the country, you're coming through forests, certainly a lot of vegetation that's not blue,
Right.
it's green, but you walk in and it's almost like saying, you're still in the country, but this is how we are going to play in the country.
Sure, sure. It
Yeah,
does echo the surroundings for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And it does, yeah, and having it be blue just makes it a little bit of it's a twist on that, right? It's a little bit of a play on the
Yeah.
foliage. Mhm.
Exactly. And then this one, it feels so, you got chinoiserie going on here. You've got this fabulous painted wood floor in a harlequin pattern.
Mhm.
Tell us about this entryway. What was the feeling you were going for here?
Sure. So this is might be the largest entryway that I've ever had an opportunity to design. This is also in a historic home, which we do a lot of historic homes in this area. This home, before our clients moved in, the only way I can really describe it is it was a little bit like a house of horrors. Every
Oh,
room had like a real theme and everything was screaming at you. And
okay.
so when we went through with our clients, we really needed to make sure that we were going to tone everything down. This floor used to be, it was still in this large checkerboard pattern, but it used to be black and white.
Okay.
And our clients, they're from the South. They really like more traditional interiors. They like more muted tones. And so we thought that it would be a good idea to keep the large checkerboard because I do think it's an interesting way to address a large space like this. But
Exactly.
we
It's a
wanted
very
to,
large scale pattern for those of you that are just listening. This large scale pattern, and the color scheme in this entryway, like the last one, is also blues and whites. But like you said, it has a much more classical feel.
Mhm.
And what's interesting to me, you said that the clients were from the South, and the color on the wall reminds me of the paint blue that you see on the porches outside, that on the ceilings.
Exactly. Funny enough, we also did it on the outside of the porch on the ceiling. So we did bring that full circle up to the
Yeah.
northeast. Uh-huh.
Okay. Great. Great. It's just really, you walk in and you think, oh my gosh, I've arrived. This feels like a special home. And then this one feels completely different. It has much more masculine feeling. It's got, you describe what is going on with this wallpaper here.
They're rivets, and they're basically like a lack of a better way to describe it, it looks almost like a thumbtack.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we picked this particular wallpaper because it was a little buttoned up, and I think it evokes a little bit more of a sense of maybe masculinity in a way. And I
Uh,
think that is a little bit echoed throughout the rest of the home that you see beyond
yeah.
this. And then actually we picked this piece of art with our clients, and the reason why they were drawn to it is because it was really a play on the wallpaper. The wallpaper is a little bit more serious, if you could
Yes.
describe wallpaper in that way.
Sure.
And the artwork is whimsical. It's these two boys that are jumping off a roof. And so
Yeah.
they had small kids, boys, matter of fact, and they liked the concept that it was just like, this is supposed to be fun. So it was a little bit of a juxtaposition between the two elements.
That's exactly what I picked up on. You've got this dark brown wallpaper with a grid-like pattern of the rivets in gold. And it does feel masculine. It feels buttoned up, like you said, and it's dark, so there's some mystery to it. But then you've got this joyful painting of these two kids. They're jumping off a roof. I'm assuming they're jumping into a pool. That's what
I'd
I'm
like
going.
to think. I'd like to think,
Yes.
right?
And it's so playful and fun. And it like tells you immediately that the people in this home, they love design, but they're not going to take themselves too seriously. And I think that's a wonderful tone to set in a home.
That's
Uh,
exactly right.
yeah.
Mhm.
Color is something that I really noticed a lot in your work. And what I was picking up on is that it seems like, and I don't know if this is a preference of yours or if it just happens to be true of most of your clients, the more public areas tend to be neutrals, and the more private areas, bedrooms, dens, offices, tend to be saturated in color.
Mhm.
Is that kind of fair to
No,
say?
it's 100% fair to say. And I think if I had to extract my reason behind that, I
Mhm.
think the way that I approach design is that a lot of the sort of more common spaces or the spaces that you might flow through when you initially enter a house, in
Mhm.
my mind, need to be connected. And then if you have an area that's carved out, so if it's an office space like this one that we're looking at, or a den like we saw just a second ago, and those become a little bit more of an intimate area. And so that room can have its own story. It's its own statement versus
Right.
the other common spaces that I think need to flow a little bit better together.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally hear that. I want to just show people that, yes, you chose a very dark wall color here, but look what it's framing. It's framing this gorgeous view of trees and sunshine. And so it's this cozy little spot. It's one chair with one little table. You could put a drink on it. And yet it's got this drama to it because of the color.
Exactly. And there's a lake beyond with
Oh,
landscape behind. And
yeah.
I think that in an effort to pull those two elements together, we chose this darker color. One, to your point, to frame out the window so that you really could capture what was beyond, but
Right.
also just bring in some of those darker lake tones, right? So
Mhm.
it mirrored that in a sense. And I think that's it's a great when you see it out of the window when you can actually appreciate the lake. I think you
Yeah.
can pick up on that.
Yeah. I can totally imagine that. Um, is this the room you're currently in?
This is it.
Okay,
Yep.
this is my favorite. So is this your room in your house?
This is the room in my house. It is
Okay.
a guest room and also functions as like a second office space for my husband.
Yep, got it. I'm in my den right now. I'm just playing around with different places to record. So I'm usually in my office, which doubles as a guest room. But anyway, okay, this room, I want to talk about the layers here.
Sure.
It is, first of all, I love that green color. It is color drenched. So it's everything, the moldings, the door, the walls, everything is this gorgeous green, soft green color. And then pretty much everything else are neutrals and it feels so warm. Talk to us about how you chose or why you chose so many different layers and describe them for us.
Yeah, so I the inspiration behind this particular room, I found this photo years ago when we first moved here, and it was essentially like a vintage camp
Yeah.
um image, and it showed bunk beds, and it had a green wall, and it showed sort of the darker tones that you see here in the table in the bunk bed, and I just loved it. And I do remember when I told my contractor that I wanted to paint the full room green, he looked at me like I had 12 heads. I he just could not wrap his brain around it, but I really thought it would be such a cool statement. And then once we did that, because I felt like that was for me a very bold move, I brought in more neutral tones because I just needed at that point to tone it down a little bit to really let the walls do their own thing. And I think
Yeah.
that's a little bit of what we do in general when we approach design is
Okay.
I always like there to be one or two statement elements in a
Mhm.
space, and then I
Mhm.
like everything else to play second fiddle or maybe supporting cast. I
Mhm.
don't want everything to scream at you because I think it can get a little overwhelming.
Exactly. And again, it's not a dark, moody green. It's soft.
Mhm.
It's the kind of room you want to take naps in for sure. And so she's got like a jute or sisal rug or something that's bigger. And then on top of that, it looks like a worn Persian or Oriental rug on top of that. And
Mhm.
there's a couple of different layers of blankets and there's some different pillows and just texture. I want to touch everything in this room. That's my happy place is when things are touchable.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, it creates a sense of ease and comfort, and it's really inviting, I think.
And I also want to comment on your thing about the contractor saying, looking at you like, what? You're gonna
Right.
everything the same color. I always tell people, never, ever ask the opinion of a contractor. They know their stuff, but color is not one. This is not
Well,
color. And
for
they're doing
sure, for
it
sure.
on what everybody else is doing. Oh, this is the dove gray that everybody chooses, so that must be the best one. So we're going to go with that. And yeah, don't listen to your contractor.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So one thing I talk about a lot on the show is how to master the mix. People have a range of things that they already own, new things they want to buy, hand-me-downs, heirlooms, stuff that was very expensive, stuff that wasn't very expensive. And I think that learning how to mix that stuff together is really the goal when you're trying to create a home that's very personal to you and reflects who you are. I think this is a great example of it. Some handmade elements, you've got art, you've got nature, all elements that I think make up a beautiful home. So let's talk about your thoughts on how to master the mix.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm a master, but I definitely love to explore. So, in this particular photo, this painting was something that they had collected. And honestly, was really gathering dust up in the attic, and we were able to pull it down and find a home for it, because I think otherwise they had discarded it as being something that they were keeping as part of the family, but didn't really know how to display it in a way
Right.
that really did it justice. And I think all of these elements together really help to tell a story, and I think they help to give you a little bit of a glimpse into who the client is.
Yeah. I was really drawn to it. This is a kitchen that is gorgeous. Yeah, I'm jealous of whose ever kitchen this is, or maybe it's, pantry. I don't know. First, describe all of the different materials we're seeing here.
So this was an extension of the kitchen. This cabinetry had already been installed, and so we really got the benefit of that, I think, in our design.
It's built-in cabinetry with these tall glass-fronted cabinets on top and drawers and cupboards underneath.
Yeah, it almost looks like a really large built-in hutch piece, right?
Yeah,
And then we brought in this sort of darker, almost like a oxidized black wood in
yeah,
the dining table. And then we have two dining benches as opposed to dining chairs along the side, in an effort to make it feel almost picnicky.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
they liked that sort of concept. And then we found these chairs, which I absolutely love. And it has a lovely cane backing to it. And it's got the really sort of straight leg with the brass detail at the feet. And I thought that sort of paired with the painted cabinets and then also with the black on the dining table was a really nice mix, because it did feel very warm and had that like organic moment in a sense that helped to sort of pair really nicely with the other pieces.
What I'm noticing too are the horizontal kind of line that you see. So that the table is making one horizontal line, and it's just below the horizontal line of the built-in cabinetry. And then you've also got this horizontal chandelier, this very simple, elegant pipe with two light sources in simple black shades.
Mhm.
But I feel like all of the horizontal, what it actually does is emphasize the height of those cabinets. So even
It
though I see all these horizontal lines, there's so much air and breath going upwards because I think maybe that's the only thing that is going up in the whole thing.
right. That's right, the only competing moment. Yeah, and the chandelier was very purposeful as well, which I failed to mention a second ago. We obviously needed a light source, but we wanted to make sure that it was extremely subtle. You don't have anything that's really obstructing your view, or you just look right past it in a sense, and that was what it was meant to do.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And then this one, we'll wrap up with this. So I just love a tiled wall. I don't know what room this is. I don't know
Mhm.
where it is situated in relation to the rest of the house, but that tile, gorgeous. It looks like tumbled tile. They're vertical tiles close together. They're all kind of shades of cream. This beautiful, maybe marble, round, very modern table with these straw chairs, and then this really cool piece of abstract art. So, talk to us about this room.
Yeah. So this is an eat-in area that's carved out of a kitchen in a
Okay.
home that we just completed in Martha's Vineyard. We had purchased this tile, which is a Zalige tile, so it's all handmade. It's
Yeah.
very thick. There's a ton of variation in the tile, which is all what we wanted because it echoed this house's views of the ocean on the other side. But a funny story about this is that we really only intended it to be between the cabinets, above the countertop.
It's like in a typical kitchen, you put tile where the kitchen counters are.
Correct, just a
Yeah.
backsplash. That's all
Yeah.
we intended it to do.
Yeah.
And as the tile installer was there and was putting it up, we had a moment where it was like, wouldn't it be really cool if we just continued this all the way through?
Yes.
And it took a little convincing. We had to talk our clients into it, and we did it. And it really, if we had not been able to do that with the tile, it would have still felt interesting, but I don't think it would have merely had the impact that this does.
It's because it's an entire wall. It
Exactly.
really is fantastic. And you can see the sunlight coming into on one side of the room. It's funny that you say it's right looking at the ocean because I was feeling like there's a pool out there. There's got to be some water out there. Something about the way the light is hitting the tile felt like
Mhm.
there was something watery about it. I really love this. And
Thank you.
it's been such a pleasure talking with you. I want to ask one last question, which is there anything going on in design that's exciting you right now?
That is a great question. I think if I were to really be excited about any maybe relevant or current trend, I think it's this idea of color drenching. I do very much gravitate towards it because I love the idea that you commit to something to such an extent that you really are trying to, have a moment with a particular color or with a particular tile, like we saw just a second ago. I like the idea that there's a material commitment to something and then you carry it all the way through a room.
I feel like that's the opposite of a generic home. There have been commitments made. So people are putting a stake in the ground. They're saying, this is me, this is who I am, or even just, this is what I find beautiful. And I feel like it personalizes and keeps it away from that sort of cookie cutter generic, I could be anywhere in the world room.
Totally, totally. It's opposite of the idea of dipping a toe into something, right? You're just
Yeah.
like going all the way in and to your point, I think it is something that you find to be beautiful or it maybe is personal to you and then you decide to commit and really go for it. And I do love that. I love that for our clients and I love to do it in my own home.
Thank you again so much. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.
We are kicking off a new segment on the podcast, which is listener Q&A. This first one comes from Sally, and she did share a few pictures with me. She says, the color of our carpet in the living room has been difficult to choose. It is a kind of a solid brown color. There are two openings to the area. One, the adjacent room that's butting up against the carpet is wood, and the other that's butting up against the carpet is tile. The wood is brown, the tile is also brown. She goes on to say that my husband is against the idea of area rugs, so wall to wall is our decision. I sometimes think we ought not to do any updates until the stock market stabilizes, but I do want to replace the whole downstairs living room and long hallway with carpet. I'm open to something else in that rarely used downstairs area. So far, we've had bids for $12,000 to $17,000, and I assume she means for the cost of wall-to-wall carpeting and installation. So here are my suggestions that don't involve area rugs and keeping cost in mind. I would choose wall-to-wall carpeting that has variation in the fibers, something with specks or strands of different tones, all within the same color to give it some variety. The goal here is twofold: to hide any stains and vacuum lines better, and to get rid of this flat block of brown color that covers one of the largest surfaces in the room. I think it's kind of sucking the energy out of it. So, what color to choose? You've already got two competing browns going on between the wood and the tile flooring, if you're not counting the carpeting. So if you're not afraid of a soft cream color for your carpeting, again, with variations throughout, not a solid color, then I think that would tie in the wood and the tile floors the best. It would kind of break up all of the brown. If you have a no shoes policy in your home and get carpeting that is stain resistant, it's actually not that hard to maintain, especially since you don't use the area that much. However, if a cream-colored carpet makes you nervous, my second choice for color would be to stick with neutrals, something in the tan family, but different enough from the tile and the wood, so probably going lighter. I think that if you were to introduce a color for the wall-to-wall carpeting, like blue or green or burgundy, it would make the flooring look more chopped up than it already is. The tiled area is so distinctive and the wood is so different from that I think you want to de-emphasize the carpeting. And to help with that, my last suggestion would be to paint the walls of the living room. First of all, paint is the least expensive way to transform a space, but specifically for your downstairs living area, I think it would also help to kind of detract from the mix of different types of flooring going on. It can be a soft color if you don't love bold colors. You could look for inspiration from what's right outside your window. So like a soft green, for example, would really work nicely with all of the browns and tans because we often see that color combination in nature, think trees or bushes. And finally, a completely different way to go would be wall-to-wall patterned carpeting. Probably tone on tone. So something like a creamy background with a tan trellis pattern or something. You could also choose a repeating pattern of squares that might take a cue from the tile flooring that's in the other room. That way, the entrance mudroom area, that's all that tile that's so distinctive, if you get a carpet that has that kind of pattern to it, I would suggest like a flat weave carpet that doesn't have a lot of tall pile to it. If it has a nice pattern on it in squares or like a trellis pattern, like I said, that are roughly the same size as the tile, it might just it might just feel a little bit more continuous. If you have a question for me that you would like to be featured on the show, please don't hesitate to ask. You can reach out to me at Xandra at slowstylehome.com. I will answer you back via email and then eventually put your question on the show in case it's relevant to anyone else who's listening.